And welcome everyone to another edition of the Cop Block Radio Show's interview series. Cop Block Radio is a show dedicated to police accountability in the police state. And if you're involved with any local Cop Block group or Peaceful Streets Project or any other group that focuses on police accountability and you'd like to come on and talk about what's going on in your neck of the woods, be sure to send an email to CopBlockRadioShow@gmail.com, or you can contact us through our Facebook page. And if you haven't liked our Facebook page yet, please do that, because then you'll be able to stay up to date with what's going on, and you'll know when we have special guests on and whatnot. My name's Eric. You can find me over at freerockpress.com and copblock.org. And you can find those both on Facebook. And with me, as always, is Adam from Spokane Cop Block, and you can find them if you just search for them. And remember to tune in every Tuesday night at, well, I guess actually next week's the last Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern. And that's going to be our last show on YouTube before we move over to fprnradio.com on June 12th, where we'll be from then on, hopefully. And yeah, I was just listening to their programs before I got on here, and they have some pretty quality shows over there. And so, yep, next Tuesday the 4th at 9 p.m. will be our last show on YouTube, and then on Wednesday, June 12th at 9:30 p.m., that's going to be our regular time, 9:30 p.m. on Wednesdays over at fprnradio.com. And since this is our interview series, and we're not interviewing each other, we have a special guest with us tonight. Joining us from Photography Is Not a Crime, Carlos Miller.
Hey guys, how's everybody? Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no problem. I'm doing good, and I was glad to see when I guess you originally reached out to Adam for something that happened with him, and then we just kind of circled back and got a hold of you. Yeah. So yeah, thanks for joining us tonight. So for those who don't know who you are and don't know what Photography Is Not a Crime is, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what led to the website coming into being?
Yeah, well, and I'm a journalist. I've been a journalist since the 90s, and I was arrested in 2007 for taking pictures of cops in Miami. And I'm not sure if I'm on. Are you hearing me okay? Because I just can't hear myself.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. So, yeah, in 2007, I was arrested for taking pictures in Miami on a journalistic assignment. And that led to the blog, basically. You know, I knew my rights, and I haven't been a journalist for 10 years prior and haven't gone to school for journalism. I've always knew my rights when it comes to taking pictures, when it comes to public records and First Amendment rights. But these cops apparently did not know my rights, and so they arrested me and they charged me with 9 misdemeanors. And after getting out of jail, I was really upset because it, you know, the media wasn't really doing a good job on covering what I thought was a big story. Of course, it happened to me, and I wasn't really part of the media. I was part of a local website at the time, which we wrote about, and it got a lot of coverage in the blogosphere, and that was very eye-opening for me because at the time, I was just coming out of the mainstream media. I used to work for newspapers out in the Southwest, and I was working at the Arizona Republic, most recently before I came back to Miami. And I was a police reporter. So I was used to having the police badge, the press badge on me, and covering the police beat, and being able to have a little bit of respect when it comes to cops because they respect the big newspaper. But when I was working for this website at the time, and the media was going through all this transition, they didn't have a whole lot of respect for me as a journalist. And what we all know the law says, you know, it doesn't matter if you have a press pass or not. It doesn't matter if you work for a big paper or if you work for a small website or if you work for nobody. If you're just a guy with a camera, you still have the same right to document police action. And so I really wanted to stress that. You know, my main thing was I wanted to beat my trial. I wanted to win my case because I was going to trial, and they had 9 misdemeanors against me. They created all these charges against me, including blocking the traffic, obstructing justice, resisting arrest, disorderly conduct, 5 counts of disobeying a police officer because there were 5 cops. And they insisted in their police report that I was standing in the middle of the street blocking traffic, where the photo I took right before they arrested me, which is the same photos on my blog, you can see the traffic behind them. So there was no way I was in the middle of the street. The street was behind them. I was on the sidewalk. And I used to think, well, sure enough, the prosecutor is going to see this photo and is going to drop the case. But no, they insisted. They insisted on taking it to court because they were embarrassed that I was blogging about it. And the blog was getting kind of popular, nothing like it is now. But even back then, it got a lot of publicity because people were paying attention to the blogosphere. So I, as a journalist, I said, this is a great opportunity to write my content without any editors. I used to work for the media, and you always have these editors, and they always try to maybe water down certain stories, even though you're telling the truth. And the blogosphere gave me this golden opportunity to write about my case and write about the issue that I felt was very important without any editing, without anyone editing me or trying to censor me, more importantly. So, over the years, I've been arrested a couple more times. I've been arrested a total of 3 times. I've been harassed numerous times. And I write a lot about other people who get arrested. This is what really got the blog going. It wasn't just about my case, but I started writing about everybody else because I really wanted to highlight the issue that this wasn't just one guy who, at the time, I was being criticized for being arrogant and obnoxious. They were saying there's one guy down here, a local blogger, who called me an arrogant prick because I didn't back down from the cops. Well, that's cool. Maybe I am an arrogant prick, but I wasn't breaking the law. And if I'm an arrogant prick, well, those guys were even more arrogant to twist the law in their favor and throw me in jail and screw up my life, which they did, because after that arrest, certain publications that I was writing for at the time didn't want to hire me anymore because they thought, oh, this guy's bad news. They saw all the charges, 9 charges. This guy was fighting with the cops. This guy is making a complete ass out of himself. When all I was doing was just saying, no, I have the right to be here. Let me do my job and you do your job. That's what I was telling these cops. And cops down here are very aggressive, and cops everywhere are very aggressive, but especially down here where they can't really reason with anybody. They can't talk to you as a human being. They have to either bark orders at you, and if you don't listen to their orders, then they're going to just beat you up and arrest you. Well, that's what happened to me. They did beat me up. They destroyed my cameras. They threw me in jail for 16 hours. And I'm a very stubborn person. I'm not the kind of person who's just going to go down and say, oh, okay, well, I'm going to accept that. No, screw that. I know how to write, and I know how to publicize my views. So I capitalized on the internet, the blogosphere, the blogosphere was still, for me, it was kind of a new concept because I was so used to writing for newspapers where I was guaranteed my story was going to get published and getting paid for it. This time I became my own publisher, and I just never looked back. I never looked back, and here we are 6 years later, 2013, and the blog is getting hundreds of thousands of page views a month. This month alone we've had 500,000 page views and still getting more. But the blog is still growing. I haven't gone to where I wanted to get to, but it's done a lot in educating people, which was what I really wanted to do. I wanted to educate the citizens. I wanted to educate police and let them know that we're not going to stand for this. And I wanted to educate the people and let them know that you might not be a journalist by trade or by education, but if you have a camera, you can still have those rights, and you can still be a reporter. And this is a big thing these days. There's the movement, the citizen journalism movement, and that's one thing that the mainstream media is very uncomfortable with. But it's something I've embraced, and it feeds my blog because all these stories I'm writing about, they're not coming from the mainstream media. They're coming from the people, and many times the mainstream media is following my stories, and so that's where we're at.
So, what will people find over on the website on, say, like a daily basis?
Well, if you click on today, I just posted a story a couple of hours ago about this woman, and I don't even know where she lives at because I reached out for an interview and she hasn't gone back, but she posted a video on YouTube where police basically barged in her home looking for another woman who had the same first name and barged in her home and say, we're going to walk into your home. They did not have a search warrant. They had an arrest warrant for another woman who apparently owned the house. But they barged in there, and this woman had the sense enough to turn on the camera before she opened the door. So we hear a lot of the exchange that takes place, and we hear just a huge amount of disrespect and unprofessionalism from these cops towards this woman who they haven't even proven is the woman they're looking for, and they're already treating her like a criminal. So one thing, what people are going to realize when they read my blog, is this whole concept of innocent until proven guilty is a myth for the most part. Cops are treating people as if they're guilty, and it's up to the people to prove they're innocent, which is why cameras are so important.
So you said that before that question was that even some of the mainstream is following what you're writing about. You seem to be breaking a lot of the news and whatnot. And I have to say it is kind of funny because I ended up stumbling across one of your posts because it was recent at the time. I had just gotten a new camera. I was looking at a lens, and it was a specific Sigma lens, and it like the second or third hit on Google was your story about a guy who had a really long telephoto lens, and they thought he was like pointing a gun at like airplanes or something.
Right, or the California one, and he was basically thrown down in his own workplace, and he actually was pointing the camera at airplanes on Friday. He went back to work on Monday. He walked in. He had just been there about a month, and he got tackled by cops. As soon as he walked in, he got tackled, and he was like, "Well, what the hell? He thought it was some new security training they had at the job, some kind of weird thing, and he didn't know what to do. He said, "No, you're pointing a gun at airplanes." Well, I mean, if that's the case, why didn't they approach him on Friday? Why wait till Monday? And number two, why don't you talk to the guy first? Make sure it was a gun. Because they're acting on a secondhand report from somebody who saw him pointing something in the dark at airplanes.
Yeah, I thought they weren't allowed to do anything off hearsay.
I guess they are allowed to do everything. Because they do whatever they want, and it's just now in the last few years that we've had, where technology has allowed us to buy cheaper cameras and has allowed us to shoot high quality video with these little small cameras, where that wasn't the case a few years ago, and has also allowed us to post these videos up on the internet. Where if you go back to the days of Rodney King, the guy who shot that video, he had to take that around to different news stations in the hopes that they would take it. And they were not interested at first. Actually, he took it to the police department first, and there he kind of blew him off. He was trying to do the right thing, and the police department, the TV stations finally ran it, and then it went viral. But, now we don't have to depend on the media anymore. There's so many stories that went missed before the internet because the media didn't really take an interest in it. They're like, well, we don't care. It's too much work. We're not going to bother looking into it. So now the people have become the media, and this is what's happening right now. So the police, they have to they haven't changed their attitude yet, but they're going to have to adjust because they've gone so many years where they were able to create their own truth. And this is what happened to me the night I was arrested. They basically said, yeah, well, okay, he was taking pictures, and we arrested him. We don't like him taking pictures. We don't like him because we ordered him away. He didn't go away. But now they go back to the law books and say, well, what can we charge him with? Because there's no law on the books that says he was taking pictures. So they had to say, well, let's just say he was standing in the middle of traffic. Okay, let's just say that he was resisting against us. And, in their eyes, resisting means, why are you arresting me? Why are you arresting? Why am I getting arrested? That means you're resisting. And also when they were trying to knock me down to the ground, I didn't want to go down because I had maybe $3,000, $4,000 worth of camera gear on me. I don't want to break my camera lenses. That's okay. If you're going to arrest me, just arrest me. I'm not going to fight you. But no, we have to take him down. We have to take him down. And I was complaining about it. I was like, guys, what's your problem? So that's resisting. And and now and I wasn't even shooting video at the time. I was shooting still photos. But now I learned that we have to always have a video camera with us, and because that is what saves us many of the times. That's the only piece of evidence that we have, because without that, then the courts and the jury and the judges, they always believe the cops, and the cops have gotten so accustomed to that they still haven't adjusted to this new technology age where they have to understand that maybe they're going to be caught on video, and their actions are going to prove them to be liars. In my last arrest, I was arrested. They deleted the footage. They thought I was just going to go away, and they were very surprised when I recovered the footage, and that became the biggest part of evidence, the biggest piece of evidence in my trial, where it showed they were basically lying, and I was acquitted. But without that video, who knows what would happen.
Yeah, luckily we're now in the digital age where we can recover those things because they're not truly gone unless they take steps to actually overwrite the data and whatnot. Back in the day, you always see, right at the beginning of The Godfather, they're taking everybody's camera and ripping the film out and exposing it to the light, and then you lost your footage. But now in the digital age, there are lots of tools out there that, as long as you don't do anything with that media, once you get it back and you go to recover that media, that what's on that, right away without writing any new files and whatnot, then there's a good chance of being able to get that type of data back, which is nice. So yeah, you were talking about you were taking still photos at the time, and then that's kind of when you realized that video is one of those necessary things. And I personally, I like to take photographs and whatnot with an SLR, and I found that you can just get a little adapter and stick like a tiny little video camera on the hot shoe of your still camera, so you can have that going. You can still snap all your photos, and it's still pointing in the same direction. So
yeah, it's gotten so easy. I mean, just back in the '90s, video was so complicated. You had to really learn it. You couldn't just buy a camera, and unless you bought one of these camcorders. But for the most part, and those were expensive. It was very complicated. You have to dedicate yourself to learning it. Nowadays we get our phones, and all we got to do is just hit record, and you don't have to have any training in photography to learn how to do that. And which is, of course, is why we see so much amateurish videos where people are holding their phones vertically instead of horizontally. But still, even those videos still capture a lot of the truth that otherwise would not have been captured.
Yeah, that's kind of one of the things now. It's the really the only rule is keep it pointed in the direction it needs to be pointed at, because there's a lot of times where the video goes way off to something else, and we're like, you're missing the part that we really need to have on video, so you have this objective record. So Adam, you got anything you want to ask?
I was going to touch base on the fact of Carlos saying his blog getting much bigger. I know we pull a lot of stories from your blog for our show, and we use a lot of your content, so we're happy it's there, because then we get to use part of it to bring it out and announce it to people. Also, on your arrest there, with where they have to throw you on the ground and can't just handcuff you, comes along the lines of you weren't showing obedience, so they must show force to you because you were cooperating.
Right, contempt of cop is what we call it. And basically, cops are so used to people, just kissing their asses that they get, it unsettles them, and it really angers them when somebody actually questions their orders. And I try to remain respectful to police officers, and I expect the same respect. But I don't feel like I have to just brown nose them, just if they're telling me an unlawful order, especially. If it makes sense, if they're saying, okay, just get off the street, you're standing in the middle of the street. Yes, sir, I get off the street. Yeah, okay, I will abide by that order. But if I'm on the sidewalk and I'm taking pictures and they're saying, get out of here, I'm saying, why? I don't want to get out. I have the right to be here. I have the right to be here. Or tell me what law am I breaking? And then
don't want to just be obedient and listen to them every time.
So yeah, I mean, that kind of comes down to, like you said, you try to be respectful, and that goes a long way, especially when you have the video going. As long as you are respectful the entire time, they are clearly in the wrong if you're not, mouthing off to them and yelling at them and swearing at them and calling them all sorts of derogatory names and whatnot. It's one of those things that some people, can't hold their tongue sometimes, so they get themselves in trouble a little bit. But it's always good to at least keep your vocabulary respectful when...
Well, and it is, but, I also want to stress that even if you do use profanity, even if you do tell these officers, fuck off, that is still protected under the First Amendment. I personally wouldn't recommend it, because I don't like to talk to people in a way that I don't want them to talk to me. I don't want them talking to me like that. But, there are times when, I was covering Occupy, a Miami eviction before I was arrested, and these cops were blocking my shot, and I told them, get that fuck out of my shot. And that's fine. I mean, and I don't, and, I've had cops many times tell me, get the fuck out of my way. I'm like, okay, whatever. We can exchange vocabulary, and we don't have to take it so personal. And as long as you're not really physically assaulting me or battering me, I don't care. I don't care what you say to me. And sometimes people, we say things in the heat of the moment, and passions run high, especially during protests. But in this particular case, the public information officer who ended up arresting me, well, she used that. She goes, well, he said the F word in trial. She said, I said the F word to her, and that was the whole basis of her arrest. Well, she said, I said, fuck you. I didn't even say fuck you to her. I said, get the fuck out of my shot, And even though I did say fuck you, it still wouldn't be an arrestable offense. We've had numerous court cases where people have won huge settlements because the cops have arrested them for saying that, and they end up cashing out big time because it's protected by the First Amendment. So cops really have to learn not to take things so personal. It's a job they're doing, and they can't arrest anybody who shows contempt, anyone who's not going to kiss their ass. Just maybe arrest the people who are actually breaking the law, and don't even take that so personal. Just do it, make the arrest, and you don't have to get all physical with them unless, of course, they're fighting back. But most people are just we'll just get arrested. Most people are not stupid enough to fight cops because you'll never win against the cops.
Right, especially if there's a lot of them.
Right.
So I got a viewer comment.
Mm-hmm. Go for it.
They ask if you have ever thought about going political and using your blog to help change laws.
Well, I as far as me running politically, I doubt that because I don't think I'll make a very good politician. But yeah, I mean, would like to use the blog to make some changes politically. I mean, not that the law. Some laws where maybe hold cops accountable. Instead of right now, they have all this qualified immunity, and so they're protected. I would like it so maybe we can have some more disciplinary action against these cops who do that, who knowingly violate your First Amendment rights.
Yeah, we talked about that last night, and we had brought up that how the cops suddenly, when they're under this directive of a badge, that they are no longer responsible for their own actions for some reason. And they suddenly are no longer a person. So, if I did whatever the cop did to somebody else, to Adam, well, then I would be in huge trouble, and I would have to pay the consequences, whether it's, medical bills or any type of settlement type of scenario. But in the case of a cop, they don't foot a single dime of it. It's the taxpayer that ends up paying for the misdeeds of a certain individual with a badge.
Right, and then they get all these benefits, and yeah, okay, they say it's a dangerous job, and maybe it is dangerous in some regards, but we need, in that case, we need true professionals. And they're going to get all this overtime, which they do, and these pensions and all these benefits, which most people are not getting pensions these days. The whole economy has screwed everybody up, where we're all basically scratching the surface just to make a living here. And so these cops, well, they have a well-paying job. They have a very secure job, obviously, where they can go kill people and still stay on the job. Well, then maybe we should demand a little bit more professionalism and weed these cops out who can't handle that job, who can't handle the stress, or maybe who have shown a little bit of immaturity by just because they were handed a badge and a gun.
So, do you attribute anything to the apparent lack of knowledge of public officials or police or even the public at large when it comes to taking photographs or video or audio in a public place? Or is it just something that nobody ever thinks about, and for some reason this hasn't come to the forefront of their knowledge base?
Well, it's a combination of things. We have the Homeland Security, ever since 9/11, they've handed out these little these documents, these training guides to the police departments, and telling them to treat photography as a suspicious activity. So if you're walking around, you're taking a picture of a building or a bank or a bridge, well, that's suspicious activity. And there's Homeland Security saying that. So the cops a lot of cops think they're doing their job. They're going to prevent some terrorist act, when the truth is there has been no terrorist act. There's no evidence of any of these terrorists that actually gone out and take photos of the acts that they've committed. Not 9/11, not the Oklahoma City bombings, not the ones in London, and not the ones we keep hearing about. Apparently terrorists, they're not really into photography, you know, or maybe they can just go out there and see for themselves what they want to destroy, because we're talking about public buildings here. We're not talking about anything that's top secret where you have to break in somewhere and maybe take a hidden camera for a photo. No, these are things that we can see. We can go on Google Earth and see. And so why are they going to crack down on the guy who's obviously taking a picture? Because it gives them a sense of purpose. You know, a lot of these cop departments are getting federal funding from Homeland Security, so they feel they have to justify that. And a lot of times the cops are just going to throw their authority around. They might know that you have the right to take pictures, but they're going to throw their authority around because most people will bow down. Most people will say, "Oh, I'm sorry, sir. I don't know. I didn't know my rights." You know, now that's changing a little bit. Now more and more people are learning their rights. But, you know, just a few years ago when I first started the blog, people who were journalists didn't even know their rights. And this was very alarming to me. It's like, wait, you work in this industry, and maybe you didn't cover the copy, but then all of a sudden you have no idea what to do when a cop tells you you can't take pictures. Well, you have to stand up for your rights. I mean, you know, I've gone through this so many times, even when I was working for newspapers. And, you know, back then it was a game of, okay, you can't stand here. We'll put up the yellow ribbon up. That's the game, you know. But you know, now when we come across something and there's no yellow ribbon, there's nothing stopping us from taking a picture. Or even if there was a yellow ribbon, we would have to stand behind the yellow ribbon and take that picture. That's it. You know, there's nothing saying you can't take a picture of anyone getting carted into an ambulance, and that's another law. That's another thing that's been abused all the time, where they're telling people, well, you're violating the HIPAA law, you know, because the HIPAA law guarantees privacy to medical patients. Well, it doesn't say anything about public photography. What the HIPAA law talks about is the transfer of medical records between insurance companies. It's got nothing to do with us on the streets taking pictures of some guy who's being carted into an ambulance. You know, that's news. It doesn't matter if you're a journalist or not, you can take that picture. And journalists have been doing that for years, but all of a sudden now that the cops realize that everyone has a camera, they're going to create their own laws, and they're going to try to be the hero. I'm going to protect this patient from getting his picture out there, and you know, a lot of times, you know, maybe we want to see that picture. Maybe this guy was abused by the cops. You never know. Maybe that's a piece of evidence, you know. And by telling people they can't take pictures is basically censoring people from the truth.
Yeah, and that's kind of one of those activities that, well, for some reason, if you are attached to a major newspaper or a TV station or something like that, you somehow get a pass from taking these type of photos. But if you are just work for some no-name organization, or you're just by yourself, then for some reason you get hassled because you don't have this quote-unquote press pass that not a lot of police departments actually give their own press passes out for.
Well, and still, even a lot of mainstream media reporters have to go through that. You know, I've written several times about TV journalists out there just covering a story, doing their job, and they come across some cop who just wants to prove a point, and the cop basically threatens them with arrest. And you know, this happened a few times in New Mexico. And what do you do? I mean, and these guys, they're on deadline. They can't exactly sit there and fight and get arrested. They gotta get the story. So they have to figure out, okay, I mean, I need to get the story, but then I don't want to get arrested, so I move back. And then what happens then is they go back to their station, and the news director calls the cops, and they just keep it all under the, you know, they don't really put it up, write about it, which they should, because it would benefit the public in learning the rights, and it would also embarrass the police department that they can't do this. They can't treat the media this way. So that's a big problem. But now, when it comes to people who are not working for the newspapers, when it comes to just the average citizen out there, well, they're going to post that anyway. No one's going to tell them not to post it. And so this is why we have so many incidents where cops are confiscating cameras, and we're going to confiscate that as evidence. And that's unlawful. They have no right to do that. They need to get a subpoena, and even then, you know, they would have to go to a judge, and it would be. They just can't do it on every case. You know, they have to do it in certain cases. But you know, just the other day, 2 weeks ago in Kern County, California, these cops beat this guy up, and they killed him. And numerous witnesses were saying, well, the deputies were beating him with nightsticks and repeatedly, and they're picking him up and throwing him down to the ground. They hogtied him, and 2 witnesses had cameras, and the cops came and they confiscated these cameras. And they intimidated these citizens into turning over their cameras, and they didn't give these guys the opportunity to download that video. And guess what? One of those videos went missing, and now no one knows where it went. We all know where it went. It went down the rabbit hole. It disappeared. And that was a very important piece of evidence because that showed these deputies beating this guy, where the one that survived was a little further back. She started recording after the beatings took place. So they allowed that one to survive. So this is like an ongoing issue, and these cops are getting away with murder. Look what happened in the Kelly Thomas incident in Orange County, the homeless guy who was beat to death. You know, now we got cops who are going to go to trial soon because it was caught on a surveillance video. And even then they confiscated cameras from people, but no one ever heard about that because they never make an issue about that. But they had enough evidence from the surveillance video to prosecute these cops, and also enough evidence from the recorders that these cops were wearing on their bodies. And if these cops were acting like that, knowing they're being recorded by their own recorder on their own uniforms, and knowing they're being recorded by video up ahead, and they still beat this guy to death, who was nothing but a mentally ill homeless guy who weighed maybe 155 pounds, well then what do they do when they're not being recorded? That's the thing we got to really ask ourselves. You know, who are we hiring out there? I mean, these are the people who are supposed to protect us. And if we're scared of our own police force, then who do we turn to? We can't. We can't exactly shoot these cops because then we'll go to prison. So we're in a very, very, crazy situation where the only thing that we have to defend us is the cameras. And hopefully that sees the light of day, and maybe through public opinion we can force this to go to trial, because that's what happened in Kelly Thomas. Because the only reason that went to trial was not just because of the cameras, but because all those citizens kept protesting and protesting. And Kelly's dad is a former cop himself, and he kept raising the issue, he kept pushing it, because they were trying to sweep that under the carpet, like they do so many times. And that's it, you know. So it's just an ongoing thing.
Yeah, we were just talking about Kelly Thomas probably 2 weeks ago, that we were talking about how the appellate, I don't know what level it was, but a judge rejected a particular individual, a particular cop's plea to not go to trial or whatever, and is apparently rejected for like the 4th time. So, but yeah, that trial is going to be starting soon. And with the Kern County incident, what was his name again? You know his name.
Silva, David Silva.
David Silva, yeah. But yeah, now that video has gone missing, and just this week the coroner's report said he died of heart disease and hypertension or something like that. And the coroner works for the sheriff's department. You know, it's just the biggest conflict of interest, and no one's raising. You know, the LA Times wrote this whole article about it, and they were doing a great job of covering this. But then when it actually came to write about the coroner's report, not once did they mention, by the way, the coroner's department is part of the sheriff's department. The coroner reports to the sheriff. I mean, that's a big piece of, that's very interesting. You know, it's a big fact that it was neglected. And I wrote about it on my blog, but even then people were kind of like, oh, okay, well, because the video has gone missing. So in these stories, when you have a missing video, that, you know, so then we go back to hearsay, even though in this case we have hearsay from 6 witnesses who did not know David Silva at all, who did not know each other. They were just in a neighborhood, and they happened to see this guy who was rejected from the hospital. He went to the hospital and he was turned away from the hospital. So he went and passed out in front of somebody's house. He had been drinking, but not that much according to his blood levels. He had like a 0.10, I believe. So it was 0.09.
0.09, yeah. And they say he had some methamphetamine in him, and maybe he did, and maybe that's what caused him to go to the hospital. Well, maybe they should have accepted him in the hospital. Maybe they should have said, well, we're going to, I mean, how can you turn somebody away from the hospital? I mean, we supposedly have laws that say you have to accept people. So they turn away, and then he ended up being killed. And now, and there's only the county hospital turn away, the county deputies killed him, and now the county coroner says he died from heart disease. Well, why the hell didn't they allow him in the hospital if he had heart disease? I mean, it all goes in circles, and something's really going wrong over there.
Yeah. So what tips would you offer to those who would like to assert their rights but can't really afford to get arrested or anything like that? So what would be kind of like the best way to avoid or keep interactions as de-escalated as practical?
Well, you could never guarantee that you won't get arrested. All the 3 times I've been arrested, I did not set out to get arrested. It just happened. One moment I'm saying, well, I have the right to be here. I have the right to record. The next moment I'm in handcuffs, and that's it. There's no way to prepare for that. So, I recommend to just be professional and make sure you're not breaking the law. So stand on the sidewalk, don't interfere, don't get too close to their investigation, don't mouth off, don't give them any reason, just remain professional, especially the recording, because you have to remember that your video will eventually go online if you put it up online, and you don't want people judging you and saying, well, you were yelling and cursing at him and you were a little unprofessional. You want them to be that. If the cop chooses to be unprofessional, well, allow that. Just let him be as unprofessional as he wants to be, and you have it on video. And don't. I always tell people when I'm out with people saying, don't get in the street, stand on the sidewalk. It's very important, because as soon as they see you on the street, they'll just use that as an excuse and they'll just arrest you. And and to make sure you're not on private property. There was a case a couple of years ago where a guy was on private property and he insisted he was on public property. He was arrested for trespassing. You have to know the laws before you can cite them. So stand on the public sidewalk. If you're on private property and they tell you to leave, well, then you have to leave. They can't tell you to delete your footage. They can't order you to hand over your camera. So whatever you recorded is yours. But if they say leave this shopping mall or the store, then walk away. Walk away. And if you really feel compelled to stay, well, stand on the sidewalk. And then if the cop comes up to you and says, well, leave, ask the cop in a professional way. Go, well, where do you want me to stand? Where can I stand? Then they'll always throw some weird number out there. Oh, you got to stand 30 feet away or 50 feet away or 20. I've heard it all. They always come up with some number that is never in the law books, but it's some number they just pull out of their head. And then, okay, well, then is this far enough? Is this far enough? But, make sure you get it all on camera. Make sure you ask for his name, because a lot of times you can't see their name tag, or sometimes they're not wearing a name tag. And a lot of times they won't give you their name, but just the fact that they don't give you their name, well, that's very telling, because police departments tell their officers you should give your name to the if a citizen walks up to you, they ask you for your name, but give them their name. That's what customer service is all about. These people are government employees, and we have the right to ask their name. Just like if you walk into any private business and you go, what's the name of the guy behind the counter? They should tell you their name. They should be. If they're not telling you their names, then they're hiding something, especially if they're in uniform. Maybe they're working undercover, they have some reason not to give their name, but even then, you can still ask, and just be very courteous. Try to be, but a lot of times it's hard. A lot of times, because these cops don't, unfortunately, a lot of them they don't treat you with respect. They treat people as if they're dogs. I treat my dog better than they treat people. They yell at them, they bark at them, they order them, and it's like this is how I guess they treat their wives back home, but we don't want to be treated that way. We don't deserve to be treated that way, and we shouldn't have to. So we get it on camera. We get it on camera and we embarrass them, and one day hopefully they'll stop.
So what tips would you offer the average person to be prepared should they come across a situation that would be deemed recordable?
Yeah, well, always have enough video space in your camera. I personally recommend having a camera other than your cell phone. I walk around with my cell phone all the time, but I use my cell phone for a lot of things, so I'd rather not use that to record unless it's a last resort. I usually walk around with either a flip, or I just bought a new camera here, a Canon EOS M, which it was $500, but it has good video quality and it's good photos, but you don't have to spend that much. And you always, try to have more than one camera with you at the same time, because there's times when, in my case, on the Metro Rail, when they knocked my camera out of my hand because the car steeped up behind me, and I pulled out my iPhone as a backup. So I was able to record the aftermath of that, including him when he hit me again. So try to have as many cameras as you can, 1, 2, 3, and always make sure you have plenty of battery and plenty of video space, and always be ready. You always have to be ready to defend yourself when they start asking you for your identification. You have to know that you don't have to give them your identification unless you're being suspected of a crime. And and a lot of people don't want to give their names. I personally don't care. I don't have a problem providing my name because I run this blog and I want them to know who I am. I wanted to let them know, yeah, I had this blog, Photography is Not a Crime. You may have heard of it. And now the cops all know me down here. But before that wasn't always the case. And so I want them to know, like, I'm not messing around. I'm the guy you've arrested before, and I'm the one who beats the cases, and I'm the one who's not going to back down. So, and I also have a pretty large readership. So maybe think twice before you do anything. But to me, it's just a matter of professionalism. If I ask a cop his name, I'll give him my name. But if he asks for my identification, well, then maybe I should ask for his identification. But he won't give that. So why should I give him my identification if I'm not breaking the law? But then if they insist, you just ask him, am I being detained? And if he says yes, then what am I being detained for? They have to come up with something. They'll probably say disorderly conduct or interfering. They'll always throw the whole interfering. They used to throw wiretapping out there, but now we've kind of gone past that. And now what they're doing, the new trend is they're telling citizens, oh, I don't know if your camera is a gun. Well, look, this here is an iPhone. There's no way you can put a 22 bullet in there. Our iPhones, our smartphones have gotten smaller, and they've gotten more advanced, but bullets have remained the same size. So there's no way you can put a bullet in one of these phones, and they know that. They know that. They're just bluffing, because otherwise they wouldn't tell you, well, put that phone back in your pocket. It might be a gun. Well, I can guarantee you, if you're holding a gun, they're not going to say, put it back in your pocket, because I fear for my life. They're going to probably shoot you. So they're using all these excuses, and they've gone through, over the last few years, they used every excuse in the book, and they keep running out of excuses, so they keep building new ones. Before it was a wiretap thing, then it was loitering, then it was interfering, now it is the camera is a gun scheme. And who knows, next year it'll be something else. But we have to just really be prepared for that. Ask them, hey, well, this is not a gun. I'm going to keep recording. There's a camera. It's not a gun. But get ready. Be ready to take the arrest. Hold your camera tight, because they might snap it out of your hand. And just, there's no guarantee that you won't get arrested. You can beat the rap, but you can't beat the riot. And there's cops, they're very proud of that, because even if they know that you will eventually win in court should you decide to fight it in court, you're not going to get that night back from jail. You spend a night in jail, and you'll never get it back.
So I just wanted to clarify. So Eric, you said a recordable situation. Well, in my opinion, every interaction with a police officer is a recordable situation.
Well, that's kind of the situation I was talking about.
Well, I was talking about, like, if you come across something, like if you actually come in contact with cops, definitely record everything. Right. But if you're walking down the street and you see something that doesn't look right to you, then you start recording. Mm-hmm. I recommend investing in dash cams. I'm going to be reviewing a couple of dash cams on my site soon. I've been testing one out, and I recommend, I wish we had the money for all this, because, we saw the lady today on the video I just posted. Well, she started recording in her house. So I'm now recommending, well, why don't we just set up cameras in our house, just in case we get that knock on the door. You don't want to be flustering around and start setting up your cameras, because, my cameras are everywhere, and they might not be readily charged, or they might not be ready. So we come to the point where we're not even safe in our own homes. We're just very sad, but we're not. That woman today, she answered the door, and she had committed no crime. And next thing you know, they're going through her, they handcuffed her, they knocked her bedroom door down, they're going through her prescription medication, and then they just said, have a nice day. And what's going to happen with that? They're going to probably turn around and say, oh, well, the arrest warrant said this woman lived here, so we just went with it. And I guess this woman got off lucky. She didn't get killed. And, just in Texas the last few days, we've seen 2 people getting killed because of cops just basically laying on the couch. And he was tased to death. And then another guy was walking across the street to check out on a burglar alarm. He was a 72-year-old man, and he got killed. And so these cops are just way too aggressive, and we need them to actually stop and think. We're not all out to get them. A lot of us may be activists, a lot of us may be outspoken in our views. We might not bow down to authority, but we're not violent criminals. So we don't have to be treated like that. And that's what they're doing. I mean, I'm being monitored by the Homeland Security because of my blog, and I've never shown any indication that I've done any terrorist acts. So it's a waste of time.
About that all the time. It doesn't matter what you do anymore. You're a terrorist.
Yes.
So real quick, you want to touch base with us on your lawsuits you have going on?
Yeah, well, how about a lawsuit against 50 State Security? This is the security company at the Metro Rail in Miami, and this is the train, our public transportation down here. So for the last 3 years, I've had these run-ins with these cops these security guards, and it started off because they're denying us the right to take pictures when the county law says you are allowed to take pictures. Usually train stations have the same laws that you are allowed to take pictures. If you want to take commercial pictures, you need a permit, and by commercial it means that you're going to take it for a magazine ad or some glossy magazine ad, and it usually entails lights and tripods and models, and it's a whole operation. So you need a permit for that because that has a tendency to block pedestrian traffic, and also the county usually wants a cut of whatever you're making. That's how it works. So I can see the reasoning for that, but when it comes to just journalism, editorial work, or just some tourist snapping shots, or maybe you taking a picture with your iPhone, or rail fans who love taking pictures of the trains, well, there's no law against that. And these people continually act like there is a law. So in Miami, it was this ongoing thing where they say you're not allowed to take the pictures, you're not allowed to take, they called the cops on us, and they called their homeland security people on us. They ran my name in a terrorist watch list, and this is probably how I got on their list in the first place. And it just was ongoing. In 2013, this year, in January this year, I was on the Metro with a friend from LA. He was taking a picture of the courthouse in downtown. I was taking a picture of him taking a picture. I was going to put it up on Facebook. It was kind of a fun picture. And these guards came out, and they started saying, well, you're not allowed to take pictures of the rails, which, one, we were not doing. Number two, there's no law against it. So I asked him, well, what law says that? I'm very curious where they come up with these laws. So I was hoping he could cite some kind of law. And when I asked him, well, what law? He got all mad, and then they started pushing me off. They kicked me off the Metro Rail. And next thing you know, I was being dragged down the escalator by 3 security guards in a chokehold. And while my friend's trying to record, they knocked the camera from his hand. He picked it back up and continued recording. But yeah, they were choking me. I thought I was going to die that day. I couldn't breathe. It was a very, very stressful moment because here I was about to die by 3 security guards who are undertrained and who have no regard for the law or our rights or any professionalism whatsoever, and they're still on the job. So we have a lawsuit against them, and what's happening is the lawyers for the company, 50 State, well, they keep milking this along because they're billing the company for all those hours. Because we told them we'll settle this right away. We'll settle this, and we offered them a sum we're willing to settle with, and we also want them to implement some kind of training guide procedures, which I don't know if that ever makes a difference, but we like to see that, train them to understand the rights of photographers. But they said, no, we're not going to settle. We're going to take this to trial, and the trial is next year, and I'll wait. They always do this. They like to always prolong this as much as they can because they think I'm going to just get tired and give up the fight. I don't do that. I've been to trial 3 times in my 3 arrests. All those 3 cases, they could have dropped it immediately. The evidence was there. I didn't break the law. The state prosecutor should have dropped the case. But no, because Carlos Miller was blogging about it and he was raising hell about it, we're going to prove a point. So they did, and they tried to. They didn't prove a point. I proved a point that they were wrong, and they end up embarrassing themselves. But they don't care. They don't care because it's not their money they're spending. And like these lawyers for this company, it's not their money, it's the company's money. And the company is the money they're getting paid for an accounting, which is our taxpayers' dollars. So it all becomes a big circle that we're paying for it all. And, this same Metro Rail security guards, they threw off this old lady a couple of months ago for singing gospel music. They tossed her right off, and she was 82 years old, and they're being sued for that as well. So where is the professionalism? It's not. And the only reason these cases have come to light, that case, was because somebody video recorded it. In my case, it happened because my friend video recorded it, and I happened to video record it. Or else it would just be hearsay. Oh, yeah, Carlos Miller was threatening us. We were in fear for our lives. These guards with their guns and their handcuffs and their badges and their nightsticks and their pepper sprays. And they'll be claiming they were in fear over me, who just, I'm just a regular guy with a camera.
Yeah, when I first saw the headline that you wrote the 50 state security guards. I'm like, holy shit, 50 of them! And then, and then I had to read. I'm like, are there that really that many there? So yeah, that's the name of the company is 50 State. But yeah,
right, and they're only based
in
one state, so I don't even know why they call themselves that.
So it's really one state or half of a state.
Yeah.
So what's the future hold for Photography is Not a Crime and Carlos Miller?
Well, we just implemented some forums, and I'm hoping those get more popular. And right now, I just put some ads on for the first time, so I'm hoping to bring in some money, and I want to eventually bring in some writers, and I just want to expand the blog. I want to just, it started off as a personal mission 6 years ago to prove a point, and it's turned into this movement, and it's a global movement, and not just because of my blog, but everything kind of came together, the technology and the internet, and people realize that they have the power of the media in their hands. So I'm capitalizing on that with my blog, and we're just gonna. I just want to make that blog as popular as possible. I want to make it as educational as possible. So, so that's why I want to bring in some new writers, maybe who have a different viewpoint. Maybe some lawyers, some writers with legal backgrounds who can give more of a legal perspective, more than I can, because I'm just writing as a journalist. And the whole point of that blog is to just continue educating people, and including police officers. I always welcome police officers come in and join our community, and they have in the past, and a lot of times they get frustrated and leave, but I don't censor anybody, and so people are always allowed to speak their mind on my blog, and the whole point is maybe we can come to some kind of understanding that, or we're really not out to cause problems. We're not out to create any kind of. We're not criminals. We're not criminals, and but we're not going to be treated as criminals. We're not going to accept that either. And if you're going to treat us as criminals, then we're going to treat the cops as criminals, because they're making up laws and crimes against us. Well, then they're nothing but gangsters. And I'm not afraid to say that, and if they're going to keep doing that, well, I'm going to keep saying that, but we have a very open community on my blog, and they're welcome to come talk it out. And I have a lot of cops who actually come and email me and say, I did not agree with you, but then I started reading your blog, and I see where you're coming from, and you're right. There's a big problem that we're having, and a lot of these cops you write about are an embarrassment to the profession, and they're an embarrassment to me. And these are a lot of real cops out there who become my friends. So we are getting places. But every day is a new story, and there's so many stories that come across my desk that I don't have time to get to. So, which is why we need more writers. So yeah, the blog, the future of the blog. The blog's not going away. Right now we're tight on money, and people have been kind enough to donate, but there's a lot of bandwidth cost. There's a lot of technical problems I'm having that I need to pay these tech guys money to have them address it, because it just is ongoing. When you're running a blog of this magnitude, it is always some issue that's happening.
All right. You have anything else you want to add?
Well, just keep carrying the cameras, and please, for the life of God, record horizontally. That's all.
Yeah. And
keep it that too much.
Keep it trained on the action.
Skinny shot.
Yeah. So yeah, thanks a lot for coming on tonight. It's been great.
Cool. Well, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you a lot, Carlos. It was really cool to meet you in person, kind of almost.
Almost, yeah. Over the interwebs.
Kinda, yeah.
So that's Carlos Miller from Photography is Not a Crime. You can find that over at photographyisnotacrime.com, all one word. So I guess that wraps up this edition of the Cop Block Radio Show's interview series. Be sure to tune in next Tuesday for our last YouTube show, and then we will be moving to fprnradio.com starting on June 12th at 9:30 p.m. Eastern, which that will then be our regular showtime at 9:30 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday nights, and that's at fprnradio.com. And be sure to go check those guys out. They got a few shows that are really good, and those guys over there are really, really cool too. So go show them some love on our behalf. And if you check out the show live, we'll have the ability to take live phone calls or Skype calls, and there's also a live chat that we can interact with those who are listening a lot easier. And just go check them out. That's at fprnradio.com. And my name is Eric. You can find me over at freerockpress.com and ohiocopblock.org. And with me tonight, I had Adam, as always, from Spokane Cop Block. You can search them over on YouTube, not YouTube, on Facebook. You can search them on Facebook. Too. Oh, you do? They do have a YouTube as well. Yes, so yeah, you can find them there. And be sure to go check out our Facebook page for the Cop Block Radio Show. You can find that at facebook.com/CopBlockRadioShow, just all one word. And then you can be up to date on everything that's going on. And we're hoping to get a lot more people on to do these interviews, so it should be good. So until next time, remember that badges don't grant extra rights.